Hello everyone, I'm Sapphire. You may know me from Spitspotsstitches over on Instagram. If you missed my video from last week, that does go over a little bit more about me and my crochet journey and some of the inspiration to the blanket, but little recap, it's all about fun. What we're liking to do in the summer is getting outside, got all our lovely fruits and our juicy colours, and then let's get to it. So just before we start and we get into week one, hopefully you've got your official yarn pack from your favourite Sirdar stockist, along with your lovely label for our blanket. And remember to sign up on sirdar.com for our free pattern and videos. Now the idea behind the pattern and the videos, we use them together, especially if we're a beginner, because it's going to enable us to understand how many stitches we need to get to the end of a row, and also where we're changing our colours. And it will also help us with learning how to read a pattern, because often it is like reading another language. So the videos will show you the techniques that we're using, and even if you're an experienced crocheter, you may want to just check how I've done things. I do things a little bit different, as everyone does, because you just find your own way with doing things here. So with our week one, we are looking at our lovely Granny Stripes panel. And this is quite simple to start, and it's useful to get to grips with our double crochets, that is UK. We've got those as single crochets for US. I had to think there because I'm on this side of the Atlantic. We're also looking at our treble crochets. That is double crochets if you're in the US. And we will be using a combination of those stitches to make something called an eyelet. So that and a chain. We'll explain that and we'll show you these techniques through the video, don't worry. And then we will be going through some of our lovely colours just to create some lovely tones right in the centre of our blanket. If you have crocheted along with us before, previously with other makers, you will need to sign up again just to get the summer picnic version of our weekly releases. You'll see in all of my videos I've used the Sirdar soft grip crochet hook. I like that because it's comfortable for me, but you will find whatever's comfortable for you. This is great if you're a beginner. There's also the bamboo crochet hook if you prefer. And we do need a darning needle, yarn needle, whatever we want to call it, to weave in our ends. Now, ends are funny. We will end up with quite a few, particularly after week one. And I like to use them outside if you've got a little bird table, like bear with me. Pop some outside, and the birds actually do like to take these for their nests, and it's quite lovely to walk through your garden and just spot a little bit of neon yellow or hot pink up in a nest. So we're ready to go. Let's get started. Grab your hook and your white yarn and we will show you from there. So let's get started with our white for week one. And we're just going to find the end. I like to just find it wherever it is and just pull some yarn ready to chain. You can take the yarn from either the centre if you prefer centre pull, or just from the outside. It doesn't really matter. And we're just going to start by tying a slip knot, and we can add that to our crochet hook. So to do this, you wrap our yarn twice, pull the back loop over the front but not all the way off my finger, and then I pull the new back loop just over the finger. You see the loop there. Pop your hook in and pull tight. So for week one we need to chain 171 stitches. And there's a lot to count there, so we probably could use stitch markers to mark out every 10 stitches, should we need to, just to keep count. But for now, we'll just make a chain. So everyone holds their yarn very differently. I like to anchor my yarn with my pinky and just pull up the loop so I can keep a tight tension there ahead of just chaining. It's all okay to be fingers and thumbs. There's no right or wrong way at all. Everyone finds their own way, and you'll probably find that you'll get a comfortable way as you chain along. So we're just going to start with our first chain. So we're holding our yarn and we're just going to wrap the yarn around the hook. We're going to use the hook I'm going to twist it so it's facing down, just so it doesn't slide off. You see that there? And you just pull the yarn through that loop, and that creates our first chain. It looks like a little V. So again, we're wrapping around. We'll just turn our hook so it's facing down, so we can pull it through without it sliding off. And we've created another V. So we've got 2. And again, yarn over, pull through, and we have 3. And you can see that little V, 1, 2, 3. So we need to do this, as I've said, for 171 stitches for our first row. I'm going to do slightly less, just because I can show you quicker the start and the end for our videos. So we yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through. If you find that you hold your hook, your yarn quite tight, and you're not seeing the gaps that you need for your chains, just pull your hook, loosen it up a little, and that'll make your chains easier to work into when we work our first row of this panel. So yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through. So we've got a few here, so you can see all the V's. Just speed it up a bit. Yarn over, pull through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 19. Okay, so I have my 33 chains just for the purpose of the video, but we will need to have 171 for our first panel, and I'd probably recommend to add a stitch marker to help yourself count each of the 20 stitches just till we get to 171. For the first row, we're going to double crochet into each of the chains to the end. This is starting from the second chain from hook. So to count that, we need to find the stitch first. So it's not including the yarn that's on the stitch, it's the second chain from the hook. And to do a double crochet, we need to find that chain as we have here. It's the second little V. We need to pop the hook straight through the middle. And we yarn over and we pull up that loop through here. We have 2 loops on the hook, and we yarn over and pull through both of those. We'll do that again. So next chain along, we can see the V. Just pop the hook in there, yarn over, and pull up a loop. We yarn over and we pull through both of those loops. Next, we will find the third chain along, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both of those. We repeat this all the way to the end. So we find the next chain, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop. We have 2 on the hook, yarn over, pull through both of those on the hook. And you can see your stitches creating the little V's along the top here. if you're using US crochet terminology, then this stitch is known as a single crochet. I suppose it depends on which side of the Atlantic you're on to what terms you use. We're just adding each of our stitches into each of those chains along. Oh, whoops. This stitch can be quite therapeutic because it's mostly quite simple. You're just working along the chain. We're nearly there. And then the last one. So the last chain's always the tricky one to get into actually because it's where your knot is. So you just need to wiggle it around if you can't quite get it in. We work that last double crochet there. And there we go. So we've completed row 1. For row 2, we are going to turn. Now row 2 counts as our right side of the work. And we can just see our stitches along. It may go a bit wiggly like a worm, but it will sort itself out after we work a couple more rows. So to start the next row, we need to chain 3. So we yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over, pull through. We have 3, and this is to start, build up for our treble crochet. I like to think of chaining 3 kind of works as a treble. So we yarn over. We're going to find that first double crochet that we made. We're going to pop a treble crochet into there. So to find the stitch, you need to see the little V. We can just see the gap there. We're going to place our hook in there, yarn over, pull up another loop. We should have 3 on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We'll do this again. We're going to do this in each of the stitches along to the very end. So we yarn over, pop the hook in the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. We have 3 on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Again, yarn over, pop the hook into the next stitch, oop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we can see that those stitches are a little bit bigger than the first row. So we're getting to the end and we'll just pop and trebles into the last couple of stitches. So we just need to note that we now have 170 stitches from our original chain 171 because we worked into that second loop on the original chain for our first row of double crochets. So we're now on row 3 and we're going to do our eyelet stitch here. So we're going to start with chain 3 as we previously did, and this eyelet stitch is created just using a treble crochet and a chain 1. So we've already done those stitches, so it's not as difficult as it sounds. So we're going to start with a chain 3, just to build up to that treble crochet size stitch. And we're going to place a treble crochet into the first stitch. So we yarn over, pop the hook into the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And this is where we're going to make our first eyelet. So we just chain 1 and that creates a space. But what we're also doing is we're skipping a stitch to create a gap. And we'll make a treble crochet into the following stitch after our skipped. So we can see that quite clearly here. You see the 2 V's. We need to skip the first V and go into the second. So we yarn over, insert the hook into that stitch after the skipped stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we've created a little gap there. And we're going to repeat this all the way along. So we chain 1, ready to create another space. We skip the 1 stitch. We're going into the next with a treble crochet. So we yarn over, pop the hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We chain 1 and we're going to skip the stitch, yarn over, pop the hook into the following stitch from the skipped, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we can see we're creating those nice little gaps. Chain 1, skip a stitch, treble into the next. So we pop the hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Chain 1, yarn over, skip a stitch, pop a treble into the following, so pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we work that all the way to the end. So if you keep going in the same, chain 1, skip 1 stitch, treble into the next, all the way to the end. I'm just going to finish mine and I'll meet you at the end of the row, ready for row 4. So we're just at the end of our row and we've got 2 stitches left. The original chain we started with doesn't count, it's just a builder, so we need to just ignore him for now. We've got our 2 stitches here. We've chained our 1 and we're ready to put the last treble crochet into the stitch just before that chain. We just yarn over, pop the hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So our ends will eventually have an edge, a corner on these, so we won't necessarily need these to be flush for now, so don't worry about that. But we just need to make sure that we're crocheting into the stitch rather than the chain itself. And at the end of our row, we should have 86 treble crochets and 84 chain 1 spaces. So the little gaps that we've created, we should have 84 of those. So we're just going to turn our work before we start our row 4. And we can work back along row 3 as follows. So we're going to chain 3 to build up to our treble crochet stitch. And we're just going to place 1 treble crochet into each stitch and chain 1 space to the end. Now the first stitch is directly beneath the chain, so we're just going to, almost like we're working back on ourselves, but we need to place a stitch in there. So we yarn over, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. And our first chain 1 space. So we're going to yarn over, pop the hook directly into the gap that we made in our previous row, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. And we're just creating another row the opposite side of our eyelets. So we yarn over, going to pop it into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. And then again into the next space. So the chain 1 space is the gap we created on our previous row. We yarn over, pop the hook into the gap, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we complete that all the way along. So 1 treble crochet into the treble crochets from the previous row and 1 treble crochet into each of the chain spaces from the previous row. And I'm just going to complete mine and I will be back with you at the end of this row. So we're just getting to the end of our row now. So we just quickly finish off the last few stitches. And again, we need to place our last treble crochet into the treble crochet, not the chain. So we're just going to add that in there now. And we're just going to tie off our white, ready to start our granny stripes in the colours. So to do this, just pull up a loop. Leave a fairly long tail so we can weave this in at the end. And we just give it a quick snip and then pull that knot. Tie it off tightly and we can worry about that in a few rows' time when we weave those in. So for our first colour of our granny stripes, we're just going to use Clementine and we're just going to grab the end as before. We're just going to join the new colour now. So I do this in a fairly simple way. I hold my yarn as if I'm crocheting with it, but it's not anchored to my hook as yet. And we're going to turn our work. Find the first stitch that we're going to start our work in and pop my hook in there. And then we need a longish tail ready to weave in at the end. We just pull a yarn over through the first stitch there. And then we chain 3, ready for our first set of treble crochets. You can just see, we can pop our ends to the side and worry about those later, where we'll weave him in and anchor him in a little bit more. So we're going to add 2 treble crochets into the first stitch. We're going to yarn over, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull through. We have 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we just need to add another in there. So yarn over, pop the hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We've made the first cluster of our granny stripe. So we're going to skip 2 stitches now. So we've skipped 1 previously, but this is just an extension of that, just skipping 2 to create a space. And we're going to pop 3 treble crochets into the stitch that follows. So going to yarn over, skipping our 2, 1, 2, pop the hook into the following, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. We're going to put 2 more treble crochets into that same stitch. So yarn over, into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. we've created a second cluster for our granny stripe. We're going to skip 2 stitches and place 3 treble crochets into the stitch that follows. So yarn over, pop your hook in, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And 2 more into the same stitch. I'm going to skip 2 stitches and add 3 treble crochets into the one that follows again. So we're going to yarn over, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. 2 more stitches into that same stitch. We're going to repeat this all the way along until we have 4 stitches remaining on our row. So I'll meet you there. Okay, so we're just getting to the end of our row here, and I'm on the last set of stitches. So we're just going to place 3 treble crochets into there. And because my swatch is a little bit smaller, I haven't got as many stitches as you should have right at the end. Please note you should have 4 stitches, so I'll explain that in just a moment. Just going to add our last treble cluster in here. So we're going to 1 treble crochet, 2 treble crochet, and 3. So I'm just the 1 stitch short of the 4 that we should have at the end of this row, ready to complete the finishing treble crochet set. So I'm just going to give a space of 1 stitch instead, but you do need to skip 2 when I explain this. So we're just going to yarn over, we're going to skip 2 stitches as per the pattern. I'm going to do 1, and then we're going to just add 2 treble crochets into the stitch before the last stitch on the row. 1 and 2. And then we add 1 treble crochet into the very end of our row. Again, not into the chain, into that last stitch. So we yarn over, pop the hook in, yarn it. Oh, haven't quite got the hook in there yet. There we go. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And what we've done here is we're just keeping our sides neat. So our last cluster is worked over 2 stitches rather than all 3 into 1. So we've got 2 into the second from last stitch and the 1 into the last stitch. Ready. So we're going to tie this colour off as we did previously. So pull up a loop and cut an end with a nice long tail and pull that knot nice and tight and turn. And the next colour is Cupid, which is a lovely pink. So we're just going to find the end of this one. And as before, just going to get my yarn as if I'm to crochet, ready to add this to my work. So we've got a nice long end. Just going to pull up a loop into that first stitch, as so. We need to chain 3 again here. We chain 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to add 2, oh no, we're not, we're going to add 1 treble crochet into this first stitch here. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now this section's a little bit easier because we're just working into the gaps that we made previously between each of the clusters that we've got from our clementine row. So we're just going to yarn over and pop the hook straight through the gap there, and yarn over, pull up a loop. And we're going to add 3 treble crochets into here. So we yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's our first one. We're going to add our second, we just add our third. So we're creating our clusters of treble crochets in between the clusters we've made on the previous row. Yarn over, we're going to work our next set of 3 treble crochets into the next gap. Pop the hook in, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You're going to add 2 more stitches into that space. And we can see we're working our granny square stripes almost into the previous gaps between the clusters. So we need to repeat this all the way through to the end. 3 treble crochets into each of the spaces between clusters, to the last space between the last 2 clusters on the very end of our row. So we're going to work all the way along in the same manner, placing 3 treble crochets into each of the spaces until we get to those last 2, and I'll meet you there. So we're at the end of our row. We're just going to add 3 treble crochets into that last space between the 2 treble clusters, from the previous row. Got 1, 2, and 3. And then to finish off our row, we're going to skip 1 stitch and place a treble crochet into the last, not the chain, into the last stitch. So we're just going to yarn over. So we skip this 1 stitch, pop the hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're going to tie off our Cupid colour. So again, leave a nice long tail ready to weave those ends in later. And tie that knot tightly, and we'll turn ready to add in our next colour of the granny stripe, which is grass. Just find the end. So as before, again, just going to hold my yarn. We're just going to get a loop onto the hook through the first stitch, leaving a nice long tail. Pop the tail out of the way. They can get a bit pesky, so we better sew some of those in soon. We're just going to chain 3. And we have a space almost immediately, so we've got our first stitch and then a space pretty immediately as we start this row. We need to add 2 treble crochets into that gap there. Just yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, and then yarn over through 2. And again our second, just so we've got our first cluster as so. We're going to work the next set of 3 treble crochets into the next gap between our 2 Cupid clusters here. I'm going to yarn over, pop in the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. And 2 more stitches into that same space. We're going to complete 3 treble crochets into each of the gaps along in our grass colour until we get to the end. So we're at the last space between clusters on our row, and we're just going to add 2 treble crochets into that last space, and then 1 treble crochet into the top of this one last stitch. Yarn over, 2 treble crochets into here, and then completing the cluster, we just need to add 1 treble crochet into the stitch and not the chain. So we yarn over, pop the hook into the stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, and we can tie off our grass colour, ready to move on to our white. So you're going to continue working through the pattern in the colour sequence and row sequence, and I will meet you at the end of your last set of granny stripes, finishing on your clementine. Okay, so we're at the end of our granny stripes. You can see all these lovely colours. Don't look too closely at my ends, I will show you how to deal with those in a short moment. We're just going to finish off our week 1 panel with our white. So we're just going to add yet another end to our blanket. And we're just going to, as before, pull through the yarn in the first stitch, leaving a nice long tail. And we're going to chain 3 here. And what we want to do is pop a treble crochet into each stitch along our row, not the gaps as previously with our granny stitches. We just need to add a stitch into each. So I'll show you how to work over those. Just going to add 1 treble crochet into the first stitch, and the next, and you see directly over the gap our stitch is kind of leaning towards the left there. We still want to place a stitch there, but not in the gap. So we have our 4 stitches so far. We need to repeat this all the way along, 1 stitch into each of the stitches, right the way along our blanket. And for the blanket, it will be 170 stitches in total. Just work our way along, being mindful not to crochet in the gap. Ooh, whoopsie, pop the hook back on. So we're just coming to the end of our row, and we want to add our last treble crochet into the very last stitch, not the chain. So the chain is here, just adding a stitch here. We should have 170 treble crochets all the way along to complete row 22. So we're going to turn. We're going to chain 3. And this is where we're going to make our lovely little eyelets as we did previously. So we're just going to add a treble crochet into that first stitch. And we're going to chain 1. We're going to create those spaces for those eyelets. We're going to skip 1 stitch and place our treble crochet into the one that follows. And it just creates that nice little gap as we've done previously. So again, we chain 1. We're going to skip 1. We just add a treble crochet into the stitch that follows. Oh, oopsie. chain 1, skip 1 stitch, treble crochet into the next. We repeat this all the way along. Ending with a treble crochet into our very last stitch. Going to turn our work so we can work back along our eyelets to create the next row. And we need to chain 3. And we're going to add a treble crochet into the first stitch. And you will have a chain space next, so we need to add a treble crochet into the chain space. So we need 1 treble crochet into each stitch and chain space all the way along. So we've got our treble crochet into a stitch, and then we've got a treble crochet into the chain space, which is simply just into the space that we made on our previous row. So we're just getting to the end of our row and just complete adding a treble crochet into each stitch and chain 1 space. And 1 treble crochet into that very last stitch. Ready for row 25. So we should have 170 treble crochets for row 24. And we're going to turn. We're going to chain 1 because we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of our treble crochets from the previous row. So that's 170 double crochets. So we're chaining 1. And double crochet is simply insert the hook into the stitch, very first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then pull through 2. I'm going to add a double crochet into the next stitch. I'm going to add a double crochet into each of the stitches, all the way to the very last stitch at the end of the row. Oopsie. So we're at the end of our row. We're just going to add double crochets into each of those stitches and 1 double crochet to finish in the very last stitch. And pull up a loop for another end. We will weave in, so we just cut it, leaving a tail, and then pull that nice and tight. And we should have a lovely panel, which is like a mirror image stuck from start to finish with all our beautiful colours. So we've just finished our row 25 of week 1. And we've tied off, and we've ended up on a wrong side row. And we know this is a wrong side because the stitches on the previous row just look ever so slightly bumpy. So when we turn this round, they're a lot more flush and neater. We just need to note this because we are going to be weaving our ends in, and we'd like those to be on the wrong side so they aren't messing with the appearance of our front side of our panel. Okay, so let's deal with the elephant in the room. We need to get rid of some of these ends. And we're just going to grab a yarn needle, otherwise known, I guess, as a tapestry needle if we need to, and we're going to thread, oh actually, silly me, we need to work these into the wrong side. So we're going to just flip our work. We don't want to have any of those ends showing on the front of our panels. So grab one of those ends, we're just going to thread this onto the needle. It's okay to be fingers and thumbs. Sometimes it doesn't go through the first time, but that was quite lucky for me. It's gone on. And we're just going to weave in our ends quite closely to the colour that we've used. So we have Cupid here. We'd probably like to keep Cupid over Cupid so it doesn't show. We're just going to weave the first part of the needle through the top of that Cupid stitch and pull it through. And the method I like to use really for weaving my ends in is simply just a combination of backs and forwards using the needle, just so we can anchor that thread in the work at the back, out of the way. So we're going to go back on ourselves. There. And you can see it's getting quite tight there. We can go back through, picking up just hiding that pesky yarn end as much as we possibly can. Now I've dropped it, so I need to pop him back on. And we're just going to go through for good measure. You never know, you don't want your work unraveling, so we're just going to go through and do that one more time. So we're going to go back on ourselves, picking up through, hiding the end through our work at the back, pulling it nice and tight, and then back through, and that should be enough for good measure so we don't have any unraveling. And we just simply get our scissors. We want to cut nice and close so we don't have any little pokey ends popping out. So I pull this quite tight, as close as you possibly can. Don't accidentally nick your work. And tie it off. And then when you pull that through, that little end will shoot backwards so it's nice and hidden. And we repeat this process for each of the ends all the way along. And you'll end up with lots of colourful wiggly worms to do what you wish with them. I like to leave them outside for the birds for their nests. So here we are, we finished week 1. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did with all those lovely colours. Again, just a reminder, the videos are always going to be there. So if you need to just reverse, go ahead, do that as many times as you need. The videos will always be there. And if you do need any additional support, we've got a lovely community over on our Facebook group. I will also be popping in there from time to time just to see how you're all getting on. I really can't wait to see your blankets, and I look forward to seeing you at week 2.